Turn the lights back on. Wow. Retro electro tech. When real audio ruled the world.
Greetings, once again, ladies and gentlemen. This is Retro Ernest of Retro Electrotech, and I just wanted to go over a very brief recap of what's been done thus far with this ARP Odyssey. And I've already produced a couple of videos, an initial evaluation and a part 2, which was just before this one. This is the part 3 video to this little series, if you will. And in the previous video, I kind of dove into some testing of this power supply board here, which was my initial focus, considering that I found this unit with an open fuse on the power supply board here and some filter caps that, let me just hold them up to the camera once again, that are physically leaking from the tops there. So I had some concerns about the health of the power supply board and the transistors and all that. I didn't know the full extent of what may have happened here in the power supply section. As well, I was concerned about the transformer, but everything checked out okay. And you know, in the previous video, I went through the testing of the transistors on the board here that are responsible for regulating the negative supply. And I checked the pass transistors, and although low in the gain department, you know, they checked out well otherwise. No open or shorted junctions with any of the transistors. I went through and checked the tolerance of all the resistors on the board, and you know, I checked the diodes as well, you know, the rectification diodes here, and everything was fine is the point. All but one 270 k ohm resistor here that was reading high. It was out of tolerance a bit. And anyways, it's been replaced by this 270 k ohm resistor here. And I'm going to zoom in on the board in just a minute. As a matter of fact, let me do that now. So other than this 270 k ohm resistor that I replaced, I also ended up replacing these two filter caps, of course. And you'll notice that I used two radials in this position here, in these two positions here, as opposed to the original axials that were mounted in these two positions. And of course, you know, I ended up having to you know, stretch the leads across the board because, again, originally it was axials that were in these two positions. But I tried to do it as neat as possible by dressing the leads with some spaghetti, gluing the caps down to the board. And I didn't want to hunt all over the world for some really high quality axial caps by reputable manufacturers. Yes, there were some on the usual websites like Mauser, DigiKey, and so forth, but they didn't have the characteristics that I was looking for that these caps have. Now, there are, and also too, the axials are very expensive nowadays as far as for what you get. And yes, there are some cheaper axials out there, but I don't want to take my chance, again, as I've said many times before, of putting any crappy components into people's equipment, or my own for that matter. And in this case, this is a customer synth, and I'm not going to take my chance, you know, and throw some caps in there that were produced in some dude's closet, you know, over in China. So anyways, these are some really good Panasonic 105 degree, 10,000 hour caps. So they're going to last. And like I said, I didn't have the rest of my life to hunt down some axials with similar characteristics that were priced you know, decent. I'm not going to get ripped off for a couple axial caps when I can find, you know, some nice radials to mount here that are just fine. So no big deal. If somebody down the road wants to return to some axials here, all they have to do is desolder them, yank them out, and have at it. The only other thing that I did was, and I mentioned in the previous video, was mount this fuse clip in place. And again, no modifications involved in doing that. I didn't have to drill a hole in the board. There were already a couple drilled, and this fuse clip just happened to line up nicely with one of them. And I was able to, you know, solder a couple leads from the fuse clip through the board there, and everything is great. So nobody has to desolder any more pigtail fuses if they don't want. But again, if somebody would ever choose to go back to pigtail style fuses, they can do that. Just take the little bolt out, desolder, and away they go. They can mount their pigtails back in and return everything back to 100% original. Now, I'm all for original. I like to keep everything original, but in this case, there was no modifications involved that would permanently alter the board or anything like that. And again, that's why I mentioned in that previous video as to why I didn't want to mount an external fuse holder to the let me just pan over to the to the back of the chassis. I didn't want to drill a hole and have a fuse holder sticking out and all that. If somebody wants to do that down the road, they can do that, but I'm not the type that's going to permanently alter a collectible synth like this. Everything is still as such, where these radials can be pulled. Again, the fuse clip can be pulled. Otherwise, everything is still original. So that's that, and everything is working fine. And that's kind of what I'm going to demonstrate in a moment. These the reason I have this power supply board mounted back in the chassis is because I wanted to do some testing. So, but I only have 2 of the 4 screws in place because I still am going to pull this power supply board out. I want to change out these tantalums. I don't really like tantalums, so I'm going to end up yanking these out of there. But that's going to be down the road because I have a lot of other stuff that needs to be done. These harnesses here, there's 3 of them. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. These are the harnesses coming off the power supply board that feed the periphery, the other 3 boards or whatever. And so I'm going to put a meter to those in just a moment and show you what the power supply board is doing. And let me go ahead and back out real quick just to get kind of a bird's eye view of everything here. Okay. So here we are. Okay, so the boards here, I also had mounted back in the chassis because they're very easy to mount back in place. They just, drop, slot right in, couple screws, no big deal. And I wanted to do that because it was a lot easier to route the harnesses to the, respective boards and all that stuff, and or the corresponding boards, and get everything tested. And that being the case, I did do some off-camera testing in the interest of time, and not a peep out of these. Everything is quiet, and meaning that there's no sound, but the power supply is doing well, very well, and I'm going to demonstrate that in a moment. So that being said, I do believe, it's kind of hard for me to say at this point, but I do believe there is an issue. Probably, I'm venturing to guess, but I'm leaning more toward connectivity rather than some failed components. Now, I can't be sure of that. I don't know if there's, a bad op amp or, some transistors or whatever the case. Hopefully there's nothing too deep rooted, but I have a feeling it has to do with connectivity. Now, for example, and I'm going to check this out in a little more detail, but you can see here on this interconnect, this is the board that interconnects the 3 boards, via these connectors, and there's pins sticking out of the boards on the back, and this interconnect just mounts on the pins and snaps in place and interconnects the boards electrically. So anyways, you can see here, and I may have shown this in the first evaluation video, I'm not sure, but you can see where somebody did some repairs to these traces, and they didn't do a bad job. They just ran some solder along and rejoined some traces and all that, but they didn't do a really bad job. Everything looks pretty neat the way it was done, so I don't have any reason to believe that there's any problems with this interconnect. Now I'm going to go through and continuity check everything, and I did bring that out in the first video that I was going to go through and continuity check this this interconnect as well as some other connections. So I'm going to do some things like that, and also let me just go ahead and pan on over here and come up. I need to check all the connections and the resistor string of the keyboard and just make sure that there's no problems there. And but one thing though that I want to bring out is that these VRs, these sliders are in really, really, really bad shape. I mean, some of these things are just about frozen in place, and I don't want to pull them too hard, but I will just a little bit here. You know, they're just really gunked up and stuck really bad. All of them are like that. Every single one of them. They're really sticky on the inside. They're sticky on the outside. They're just, I don't know if, let me see, you can see on my finger how, you know, they're just all over the place. There's just this dirt and sticky crap everywhere. You know, they're all, like I said, the shafts are all seized up. And as some of you probably know, like with receivers, for example, and amps and all that stuff, I've seen pots that are so bad, that are so gunked up and so filthy and tarnished that you will actually have signal loss. You know, you'll have a dead channel or dead channels just due to really, really oxidized and tarnished contacts within pots and VRs. So until I really go through and get these VRs, these sliders and switches and all that, just thoroughly cleansed, relubricated, and go through all of the connections, I'm really not going to know for sure, at least yet, what's going on with this, you know, with this unit. So I want to get that done first anyways. Now that the power supply is doing okay, I just want to go ahead and take care of that. So moving on. Okay, so the unit is powered up now, and if you just keep your eye over on the meter over here, I have these two test probes here pushed in slightly to the to one of the connectors here coming off of the power supply board, one of the harnesses. So let me just kind of seat it in there a little bit better. And as you can see over on the screen there on the meter, we have our negative 15 volt supply. Okay, and over here, let me just go ahead and get resituated here. We have our positive 15 volt supply. Okay, and that's the same with you know, with all of the harnesses leaving the board. Everything is fine, and I haven't performed any electrical adjustments whatsoever. I haven't adjusted any of the trim pots, nothing. That's just as it sits, in other words, okay, without any adjustments, any tweaking or anything. So that being said, I'm going to again go through all of the connections, the VRs, the switches, check everything over on the keyboard itself, all of the connections, and you know, the resistor strings and all that, and just, you know, see what there is to see. I don't know yet what the problem is, but like I said, I have a feeling it has to do with connectivity. And but if it is something else, like I said, you know, I'll cross that bridge at that time. But right now, I'm going to have to shelve this for you know, a number of days. I have some other equipment that has to get out the door first. I just wanted to get this thing, you know, rolling, and at least go through and do some troubleshooting, make sure that that power supply was okay. So that's that. When I get back to this, I will obviously continue the video series and get a little bit deeper into the analysis of the problem as to why this thing isn't producing any sound, and go from there. So stay tuned for the next videos, because I have more coming. I have some receivers I need to take a look at. I got some other stuff, you know, I have to get ready to go out the door. Not everything that I'm going to be working on, I'm going to produce a video on. It's just impossible for me to do. I just don't have the time, but I'm at least going to produce a few more videos in the days to come, so stay tuned, okay? And as I always say, peace, love, rock and roll, and of course, vintage audio.
This is a poor man's shoe production.